I have a question, but I think it's more towards Jan, because I know I'll be working with that child who has the handwriting. Would you suggest that I collaborate with the behavior interventionist in order, because I know we're more primarily for the vision, but you know what I mean?
Check with Regional Center and see
Okay.
if it's still available. That's what I was going to do with this other family, because I don't even know if they still have a behaviorist or if they would recommend one for that. Yeah, that's tricky. I don't know that I'd recommend it, because it's one of those kind of behaviors that is really difficult to impact. If she's obviously dealt with her pediatrician already, and it's a neurological thing, and I don't know. I honestly don't know. Anybody else?
Yeah, I was thinking, how was I going to do this once I start going in there? And, you
Yeah.
know, but I was trying to see how I could apply this, but I know it's a neurological thing, and I was thinking maybe we can replace the hand with something that's similar and stimulatory, which is like a bioteether. I don't know. I was
Well,
thinking,
like the child with pica, I can get her to go through a whole session with me now for an hour with only trying to put a toy in her mouth for maybe 2 or 3 times, where in the beginning it was absolutely every single toy. So I did make an impact. This child, the same thing. You may be able to put things in the baby's hand and get her to notice those and get her not looking at her hands and messing with her hands so much. Yeah.
Yeah, only appropriate certain things that she'll be able to. But I don't expect you guys necessarily to construct these, but you will have information based on your contact with the child and families that might impact the behavior plan. And then also you need to be informed of what the goals are for behavior plans, because anybody really who's involved with the child should know what's put in place as far as goals, because you can actually kind of it's self-defeating if you have somebody in there who's actually reinforcing or putting in some things that they actually wanted to eliminate. So talking to, if it's the pediatrician, whoever set forth the behavior plan, so you have an idea of what it is that they're recommending as replacement, and then give your insight as to how often you see the behavior too. And if you've noticed a decrease when you do certain things, I think that would be valuable for them to know, if they haven't already asked you, because they should have already asked you. And you see something?
Just another little side note. I had a child go to a behaviorist, supposedly a behaviorist, specialist with special needs child, but they really weren't. Okay, this child was throwing everything, and what they had the child doing was redirecting it to, I guess, positive throwing behavior, throwing crumpled up paper into a waste can, which of course it just kind of fed into it. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
And I heard the mom, this child was autistic, and I heard this mom telling me this, and I was just like, I kind of would think they could do something a little different. I would question that. I would ask them, is there anything else we can do? And I think she ended up dropping this person and ended up not getting any help. But it just always struck me as funny because...
Yeah, that sounds peculiar. I mean, usually you want to find a replacement behavior that's going to provide that same, in that case, if it was stimulation that the child needed. But I don't see how that would be that helpful. If it's in the house and they're still throwing, it's still throwing behavior. It's not appropriate. It'd be one thing if only in outside in the yard for a certain duration of time, they can play, throw balls or something like that. Then that is logical. But there's a context to it. That's set up as a replacement behavior, as a reward. But yeah, that sounds a little funky, because that to get the connection. I mean, I would be anybody's confused.
Yeah.
So
she didn't ever stop throwing.
Yeah.
It didn't help.
No, she'll just throw other things. It'll just generalize. It'll generalize from the toys to whatever's around.
Yeah, and I think
hey, there's silverware here. Throwing that. It's whatever.
She liked them throwing paper, crumpling paper and throwing papers.
Yeah, that was fun too. Yeah, so you have your papers on the desk and your kids throwing the papers, so that's great. That's great. Yeah.
Anyway.
And, oh yeah, go ahead.
No, my questions or my comments or what is it? For that, you brought up something. I think it always go back to when you go to their home. Always ask the families, mom, what's the key term you use for the child putting? If there's, but be that consistent with hands down or gentle hand, or how they're doing a lot of self-stimming, those kind of the terms. Make sure that you know or aware of what they're using from their parents. So they're to me, the parents are the best person to kind of go to, and then you kind of work from there. Is this something that you want me to continue, or kind of like that, to help that kind of support to them.
And Vilay, honestly, in this particular situation, it was an intake.
Oh.
And it's important to listen for a few visits,
Yes.
too. And I think there was a language barrier going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you get that
Yes,
impression
I
as
did.
well? Yeah, and I hadn't expected a language barrier, but there was a language barrier going on. And it was a little difficult to gather some of the information.
But also, mother was very overwhelmed.
Yeah, she was.
She's doing it on
There's
her
a lot.
own. She had 4 kids.
Yeah, extremely overwhelmed.
Yeah. But maybe over time,
Yeah.
we'll be able.
Yeah.
I was overwhelmed just listening to her. Poor woman.
And I think it doesn't hurt to ask if they have, particularly if they're talking about problem behaviors, if they've had a behaviors come out, if they currently have a behavior plan in place, because that way at least you could then ask the questions about it and get information about it. Because really anybody who works with the child, should have some awareness if there's some goals that are set in place for that child, and if these behaviors have been identified as a problem. Yeah.
And this one, it was pretty apparent because the baby had one glove, not two. And it was bundled up more than just a little mitten. It almost looked like a bandage. It was heavier, and that led to my question of why the baby
Right.
had it on. So,
Well, also because the mother she would need to put the ointment on, and baby would try to, take it off, so she had to put the ointment, bandage, mitten, whatever else she had, wanted to,
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
baby,
and you could see scarring on her other hand after she said, "Look at this." Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and that sounds more organic
yeah.
to the point where it's, she's damaging her hand.
Yeah, because during the intake, I even started asking questions. I was asked again, oh, so does this stimulate her? And then Jan kind of like, well, I think it's neurological. You already have it in your mind. I know it's neurologist.
Gave you a look.
Okay.
Yeah,
let's save that.
yeah. But it may be stimulating too, just like the self-stimming behaviors. And with kids, sometimes in the classroom we give them things to squeeze, or with some kids I've given them a band and they just want to feel like that with the band. It's a bracelet, rather than poking themselves or something, they'll just get the band. So it's just going from one behavior to another, something that would be a little more socially acceptable.
That's true. And she is teething too, so,
Yeah.
And I think too with our kids, when we see things like that right off the bat, it's really important to get that visual assessment information. Because how much vision does that child have, and how much is she compensating, doing other things, and then in replacing, her use of her vision for doing something else? Is she doing that because of that, or what's going on there? And how much stimulation is she getting at home?
Right.
Is she in her crib all the time? Is
Right.
Where is she?
Right.
And that'll give us some answers too, I think.
Those sensory things are real important, and more there's trainings offered for professionals regarding sensory needs and working with children, because frankly, you could put behavior management stuff in place, but if there is a sensory need, we need to look at that and try to make sure that the child is getting that, There's times and places to do a behavior plan. Like I said, there's other times when there's been a trauma for the child. You know, you don't really want to go to a behavior plan, at least not right away. You know, so there's certain things we got to look at. But okay. So once we kind of take a look at the data, then we want to set some goals for that child. And basically, these are goals that have to do with diminishing that target behavior. So what is it that you want the child to do? Okay, and so that would be a discussion. If a child is throwing things, do we not want them to throw anything? Will they be able to, will there be any context that would be appropriate? And not only that, but we also want to look at the target behavior. What do we want to do with it? Do we want to reduce it? We want to reduce it from a particular frequency to another frequency. And you'll see that in behavior plans. It has to be something that's measurable, that we can see. And so that's why the behavior needs to be something that's overt, that everyone can see. And we're going to diminish that behavior. So if it's throwing something, we're going to see that less. And usually it's not typically to 0 right away, but we'll see the child actually doing that less. So it might be reduced from, once a day, to, 3 times a week. And these are set, but they're easily changeable as we evaluate the plan. So it's something that usually the team, and it's typically a team of people, even if it's just 2 people, the parent and the behavioralist, but typically a team. And the information about the behavior usually is not just from the parent. It'll be from you want to get other members of the household if possible, and other providers. So hopefully people will be asking you guys as well. I would try to ask pretty much whoever's working with that child. Because what really stands out is when you have contextual differences and you have a child that's really acting out, and this is more typical children, but acting out in a certain environment and not acting out in another environment. In fact, sometimes they seem like entirely different kids. Then we really need to look at what's happening in that environment where they are acting out. Okay. So setting the goals, we want to make sure that, again, we're reiterating diminishing of the target behavior by frequency, and what behaviors that we want to see are replaced. So we need to, typically with behavior plans, you're talking about replacing an undesirable behavior with something that would be desirable and appropriate. And if you work with special needs kids, it's going to be real important that you look at something that's going to have the same type of, even if it's physiological effect for them. So like I said, sometimes when you have kids in the classroom that, are doing certain types of hand movements and things, we want to do something that still would allow them that, but that's appropriate, because we know that they have a need for that. And then at the end of it, what you want to do is you want to make sure we evaluate this, that all of us as a team. And you may see a reduction in behavior just at school or just at home or across the board. Maybe it's not to the degree that you projected, but it is some. And like I said, typically when you start a behavior plan, you will see an increase in behaviors. So that's something to be discussed as well. Okay, we just know that from studies with all kinds of animals. You'll see that it sort of peaks at first. And there's actually a name for that. I forget what it is offhand, but there's a name for that response. Did you have a question, Linda? Okay. So this is something actually we're going to do later.